Yo, what's up guys? We just finished our first run of Steel Fortress Abyss hard on auto, so now we can also do that in Scout Battle. We did not get sub 50 seconds yet, but that is actually something that Steel Fortress can help a lot with to actually unlock. And why is that? Well, the main thing that you're looking for from Steel Fortress is trying to get some damage on X elements. So let's see if we have an example somewhere. Yeah, we have one over here. So damage from wind towards light, 8%. This can go up all the way towards a 15% on a hero, which is incredibly strong because the moment you start doing that, and let's say you have a Hua and she does extra damage on wind, that is just simply going to be so much more damage output than you can normally get out there. And the main reason is, well, we already have an 11 over here, so that is good damage output over there. Let's see if we already have something for you, maybe. Now we also have... I kind of want to keep you... Well, it's also minus wind, which is also arguably pretty good. So we can add some extra damage in here. And that is just a flat damage increase. So getting 10% extra damage from your runes is kind of difficult. Getting 10% extra damage from your artifact is relatively easy. And I've been doing this at the moment at level 54. I would not really recommend to do this before level 50. Might be a little bit hard. One thing that is really a must, in my opinion, is take the Cordelia. Cordelia is a unit that's been recently buffed. And Cordelia is the best buff blocker in-game because it's a 2-turn buff block and it works on her passive. So her skill 2 is a multi-hit, so it will be applying that multiple times. Skill 1 is just a one-time hit, but therefore it also will apply just one time. My Lauren still not skilled up over here yet. Also, no skill ups on this thing yet. Rogue, I started to skill up with just adding more 2As into Rogue. This thing is max skilled up through an event, and this thing was also max skilled up through an event. So if my Lauren gets more skill ups, it is recommended, especially for the S2, to have high activation rate on your HP recovery and also more chance on the slows. It is nice. It's not really a must, but it is something that you could work with. Also, if you do have the Chakram Dancer on fire, you can replace it with the Lauren as well, or the Lauren can be replaced by the Chakram Dancer. It is faster, but it might feel a little bit more because the heal block of the Lauren and the pushback of the Lauren is actually pretty nice. So what is this team consisting of? Farming Steel Fortress is by far the best improver to get Scout Battles in. And to get Scout Battles in, as you have probably noticed, you need to have your run of 30 being as fast as possible. So if we end this right now, and you can see that over here. So I did not do these dungeons yet. Over here, my fastest run is a 59, so I can do 200 times. Over here, it's also a 53, so I can do 200 times. However, the other ones I did not do well. Then it also does show 180 times. But if we go to this one is maxed out already. I can do it 220 times, and that is sub 40 seconds. And sub 40 seconds is the main goal that you're aiming for. But how to get to those sub 40 seconds? Well, of course, Necro with Rage Runes will help you out a lot. But what also does help you out a lot is going for artifacts, topside artifact in this case, which is going to be the elemental artifact, which gives you a damage increase. So what we do have over here, I think Cordelia has one of those. The damage increase is really, really nice. 9% flat damage increase is... There's pretty much getting this in runes is going to be super difficult to get this much of a damage increase. And you do only get those from Steel Fortress. So it's highly recommended if you want to max out the value on your Scout Battles, do Steel Fortress early on in the game. Best team that you can use is this team over here, which is going to be using Cordelia. I picked her up from the wind version of the elemental pickups, which is the Summoner's Way event here on the right. It took me a little bit of time before I actually got there, but at some point you will get there. I pretty much cleared the whole row on that. And why is she that crazy good? Way better than a Vampire Lord that some other guys might say, or going for a Heihachi or whatever name that thing is. This thing has a buff block that is activating on every turn. A Kung Fu Girl on the wind does not have the buff block activation on skill 1. Sure, it can go skill 1 into skill 2 and then have buff block, but that is only a 1-turn buff block. This is always a 2-turn buff block, and it happens on every hit you do. So the skill 2 is a 3x multi-hitter, so therefore we'll be applying buff block 3 times, or attempting to apply that 3 times. Skill 1 is just a single hit skill, but that is still a very good one to apply buff blocks on. Rest of the team is pretty much units you already have. Why you should already have from your R5 team, and then also it translates into this one. Rogue you should already have. For skill ups, no skill ups on this. Rogue I started going for skill ups through making multiple Rogues and then feeding them into the Rogue by doing multiple 2As. Why I did skill up from an event. This thing I did skill up from an event. Also looking at this stuff, we already have a 211 rage set by just having a few runes in there. Like, by all means, this is barely grinded or anything just yet. And the set is already for crit damage looking pretty impressive, I would say. Attack, not as much, but I can't have everything. And then we have the Lauren. Lauren is not max skilled yet. It is recommended to max skill on the S2 because then she has more chances to strip, but also apply the recovery disruption because the boss in the end does recover. If you are a little bit faster and you do have a Shaina and that is the Chakram Dancer on fire, you can place the Chakram Dancer on fire here as well. It will help a lot for clearing the waves. However, Lauren is better for clearing the boss. This team is very simple. We just saw the run of 30 fill once or twice. That is just the main issue is that it is a little bit on the side where the moment that I don't clear all of the units, and if there was a full defense break, the Rogue has more chances of going multiple times, and therefore you have more chance of actually getting the whole team dead. Whereas in this case with the Lorne, since I don't have that Chakram Dancer, it is somewhat common that some of these things are still alive and then they start hitting. If they hit on the Cordelia, she's not super tanky out there. Could make her maybe a little bit more tanky, would be a bit more safe, but that is the thing. Also, this is not a perfect scenario for Cordelia to always land the buff block, because it would be nice if she's way faster than the rest and she moves twice before the rest of the team moves. Also, this Lorne, if it had the skill up, we would have probably removed this defense buff already. So skill ups on the Lauren will definitely help out a lot for making this run a lot more safe. But as you can already see, the 2-turn buff block will remain even though that we have our Cordelia dying. It can take a bit longer if a run goes kind of bad like this, which does happen from time to time. No, you don't really have to put any healers in there. You still clear simply because Cordelia is that strong for having the 2-turn buff block. And that's really the thing. 2-turn buff block is so much better than 1-turn buff block, because if you apply 1-turn buff block and the boss is at 80% attack bar, then the 1-turn buff block is very soon gone already. Whereas a 2-turn buff block, even if the boss is at 99% of his attack bar, buff block will still remain for at least 101% rather than 1%. That's like a magnitude of an increaser by quite a lot. So definitely would recommend to go for this team. As mentioned, Lauren is the only one that I would replace for the Shiner. Outside of that, I wouldn't replace anything else. Also, if you have the Shiner, you could put the Shiner on the lead for attack if you have high enough crit rate. But I think in the early game, mostly you're lacking crit rate, so the Hua lead is probably the best thing you can do. Buff block over there, no defense break over there. Team up, no defense break over there. So the run is once again a little bit slower. You can get stunned at some given moment. It does happen, but in the end, most of the time, this team will run very smooth, very nice. And also what you can do, the moment that you feel like, hey, this run is failing a little bit too much for me, run it once, get a sub 50 seconds or sub 60 seconds, whatever you can do, and then just scout battle it for one night. If you scout battle it for one night, which I will definitely do the moment that I will go to a festival in my old hometown and that kind of stuff, I will scout battle it for just 8 hours. After 8 hours, you will have a lot of artifacts to work with. At least you can place an artifact of every main stat on every unit that you would like to do, because you're just going to keep all artifacts. And if you're lucky, you also get a few of the right elemental things to get those in. Because the thing that I'm trying to work on right now is trying to get my Necro team to a faster run. But Necro team to a faster run is pretty difficult because there's a fair bit of RNG. I don't deal that much damage yet. But the moment I start putting damages on Dark on all of these units, the damages on Dark will actually make it where I add in a lot more damage. Especially if I have like a good damage on Dark on you. We currently have a 4 damage on Dark. Did we already randomly got a better one? No better one on you just yet. How about you over there? 8 damage on Dark. So that's already where you can see is like, or 9 damage on Dark even. That is just 9% extra damage for this Abigail. That is really something that improves your speed on your runs. And in the end, you want to have fast runs because you want to try to get everything to sub 40 seconds to get the highest value out of your scout battles. But for now, the easiest way for me to do a lot of Steel Fortress is going to be doing 200 Steel Fortresses for free. So that's what we're going to do right now. Another thing I would like to talk about is what I've seen from few people doing beginner series at the moment. So Shambi is definitely doing a beginner series at the moment. He started off with going for a Prowlers route and then going from the Prowlers, helping that to get his Giants in there, and then he was doing Dragons, and then now he's doing Necro. He also talked about Spiritual Realm, and he's talking about, well, pretty much every dungeon out there. Is that a recommended route? In my opinion, not really, but hear me out on that. So why do I start off with Necro? Well, Necro is not necessarily for Rage runes. It is for Will runes more than for Rage runes. Because in the end, people are true if they say you can clear all content with just Fatal and Blade. 100% true. But can you clear all content specific on R5 without will runes? Yes, you can, but it's not going to be easy because in the end, if the boss starts stunning you, you need a proper good cleanser. If you don't have a Freya is one of those units that actually does help you out a lot with that. It's going to be a lot harder. Plus, in the end, on Bill, you need will runes. It's just a must for your Bilger team. Sure, you can do different teams where you don't need it, but it is a highly recommendation to have will runes, and therefore you can see that going in. Also, I did see Sean B. He's now farming Necro as well, and he said in his previous video he doesn't have any Rage crit damage slot 4 or will crit damage slot 4 just yet. Can be a bit of RNG, but it could also be the fact that you started off in Giants and you did not start off in Necro right away. Because if you started off in Necro, you would have probably had those. So that's one of those things. Counter argument is though, someone did mention it's like, yeah, okay, but if you want to do PvP things, you have to get your Swift and your Despair in. Well, Despair, not really. Swift, yes. But what kind of PvP are we talking about? Are we talking about just clearing some normal arenas over here? Well, as a beginner account, the only thing that you really care about getting 1500 in here, which is relatively easy. And then afterwards, I don't think you get any more rewards for trying to get the highest rank out there. So you might as well just fight Amir 24/7 and you always one-shot that, doesn't matter what set you have. As long as you just like whatever set on the Tesha, that's already fine. We'll have to do those in a second. So you don't really need Giants anytime early. Another thing that I've seen a few people say is that, okay, Spiritual Realm. Should I go into Spiritual Realm? Because in the end, fight runes are really good. Yes, fight runes are really good, but do you really need fight runes? No. And the main thing is, yes, you will need some fight runes. But what kind of fight runes do you need? You need these kind of fight runes where they're just some trash freaking thing that you can put on side units that don't really have to take a turn. You don't actively need good fight runes at all. So where do you get those? Well, that's very simple. You go to this crafting building over here, and then you craft low fight runes, and you craft those over here, and you get a bunch of materials from this, either through doing the quests, through doing some of the events, and through doing some of that kind of stuff. So the only fight runes you particularly need are those kind of fight runes. Because sure, a fight set on a slot 2 attack and a crit damage slot 4, those are really nice. But in the start of the game, it is not really that much of a must to go for those. So fight runes aren't really a must. However, fight runes will become good later on if you actually want to push towards super fast teams. But you got to keep in mind, if we look at the current teams that I'm running, where can you actively place fight runes? Because fight runes only go to support kind of units. So in this case, a Lauren or a friend could be on fight runes. Veramos could be on fight runes. The other two wouldn't really do that. In this case over here, you could potentially put fight runes towards a Siren or a Abigail, but you could also push for more damage themselves rather than adding in more fight runes. Plus, fight runes don't really help if you do damage enemy max HP, which this shaman is doing. So therefore, it is not as interesting. And for this team, sure, the Lauren could have fight runes, but the other for not really. You just want to add more damage to them. But they're not the end-alls like, oh, you should have crazy good fight runes to do anything. No, not at all. But where are you going to get fight runes? Well, currently, we don't really have a good example for an event, but at some point, there's going to be events, and these events ask you, like, hey, what kind of rune would you like on a hero type? As of recently, we haven't had too many of them, but there are some events, like, sure, you have like the legendary in here. You have to make a few choices. At that point, yes, this is a point where it's like, oh, I cannot throw everything at like the Fio, Will, Swift, Despair kind of high level. Then you start throwing them on fight. And that is what I would recommend to do. So use your events to get fight runes. And especially if there is a hero events always go to fight runes, fully on fight runes. Because a hero violent rune or a hero swift rune, sure, early game, it's going to be an upgrade, but it's more usable to put those towards your fight grind, so you don't actually have to go actively in a dungeon that has, outside of just fight, not that many interesting things. I also did see Sean B go heavily on a Ikaru, and Ikaru needs a certain amount of defense, and therefore we was going pretty heavy on the rune set of Determination. In my opinion, completely skip on this. That's old school meta. You don't need an Ikaru anymore. It's not that deep. It's really not something that's going to be that interesting. And if you want to get your Ikaru good at some point, the main thing that you're going to do is you're going to make Ikaru full broken. And with full broken, what does that mean? Well, you just have been rolling all kinds of runes. Thus far, I haven't had any of them too good, but this is a 24 over here, for example. This is also 23. Those won't really cut it, but at some point you will get like a 30 on this side, you will get a 30 on that side. And then the main thing you want to do if you want to hit the Ikaru, you want to add a defense on a defense, and most of the time you don't have that with the defense thing itself, but you're just going to put a gem and grind in here, and then you can get all the way, if it goes full legendary, up to 70 defense in there as well. So it is relatively easy to hit the right defense threshold on your Ikaru, but I haven't even built an Ikaru yet. You don't really need an Ikaru in the current day and age. Sure, it's nice for an R5. Sure, it's nice for maybe a Necro team if you want to speed things up a little bit. But in the early game, you're still going to use Shaman, and Shaman is going to be replaced by Ikaru if you're way more late game. But then we're talking way more late game, because right now we really do need that Shaman for the extra bit of healing and the chip damage and all of that kind of good stuff. And we don't have enough firepower yet to just skip on this unit. Once again, for R5, yes, R5 you can definitely use it, but that is also where this guy comes in. His team up is so much better than an Ikaru team up because it leaves a branding. Sure, it's with less units, but leaving that branding is way higher on value than the extra one unit that's being teamed up with. So that's one of those things. Ikaru, I would just skip out on that unit until you need it at a later moment. Tark is going to fix your issues. There's so many different things that just fix your issues right now, so you just simply don't really need it. However, is there only one way to reach a goal? No. You can go any kind of different route that you will at some point get to your goal. The question is, do you want to do that in my opinion, the most effective and efficient way? Or do you just want to do a little bit of everything? Because in the end, nothing is wrong with it. You're playing a game. You're just doing something for your fun and free time. But I would say if you want to have a guide to get the fastest progression out there, it should also be the fastest progression out there, and not just doing a little bit of this, doing a little bit of that, building 3-4 specific units for giants, and then switching like, oh no, wait, but I also have to do this and I also have to do that. No, I actually want to have like a proper route. It's like, okay, this is what I'm aiming for, this is what I'm going for, and that is the goal that I'm having. So in my case, that's going to be Necro first, make sure that we can do R5 pretty soon after, get some Steel Fortress in, get as many dungeons to sub 40 seconds on Scout Battle, and then we have a comfortable farming spot where we can actually start looking like, okay, we start doing giants, because then we're looking into PvP stuff. So I have a clear goal of like, okay, what is the first few steps to boost my account as fast as possible, to be able to start doing scout battles most efficient as possible. And that is pretty much what this whole guide is for. Of course, you're also very free to disagree with the whole guide and still be like, no, I want to go giants because I just want to be the fastest out there. Well, you're gonna have a bad day on the first day account. I can tell you, if you want to PvP early on, you're probably better off having your whole team on will runes than your whole team on Swift runes, because you're not gonna outspeed people that have been playing for 4 or 5 or 10 years on the first few weeks of your account. But what you can do is trap them with will runes. So that is something that you might keep in consideration if you want to go towards PvP. Necro is not necessarily the rage dungeon. In my opinion, it is more the will dungeon. Plus, the moment you go into siege, destroy, if you have a comp on the enemy side that doesn't have any form of damage output, destroy will win you your match. And the Nemesis and Vampire are not bad sets neither. Energy and Fatal are very suboptimal sets out there. Sure, they can do something, but they're not really that great. Over here, same thing with Guard and Dur. Shield and Revenge, I can make the argument for that they're useful to a certain extent. But this one over here, all of these runes are actually pretty usable. Only if you don't care about siege at all, then Destroy gets a little bit less interesting. But outside of that, all of these runes have some value. So that's all for me, and just giving a bit of an update of what I'm working towards, how I'm working towards that, and why I make certain decisions. So for me in the current process, it's just farming a bit more Necro, because Necro scout battling is the slowest thing out there. So for scout battling, I'm kind of doing everything back and forth a little bit. I'm definitely scout battling a bit on R5. I'm scout battling a bit on Steel Fortress. But the main thing I'm farming is still Necro, and I will be farming Necro for a fair bit more. And sure, I can already easily farm giants. I can easily farm dragons. I just haven't done that yet. But these two dungeons are way easier than this dungeon in the first place. On a fresh account, if you really focus for it, I'm pretty sure I can make a Dragons team working within 3 or 4 hours. I can make a Giants team working on a fresh account probably in 7 hours or maybe 6 hours. whereas a fresh account into Necro is probably like 14 to 20 hours. So yes, it takes a little bit longer, but there's plenty of early game stuff to do that you don't have to go into these farming right away. So it doesn't really matter that it takes a little bit longer, because you just need to have the right units rather than the right runes, because the right runes, any of those runes for all 3 dungeons are pretty much the same, because you get them for free anyway. So you don't have to do a stepping stone farming kind of thing. And at least Necro, if you do that properly, will bring you right away into R5, and you don't have to do that much of R4. Then you might of course ask, okay, when do you stop farming Rage and when do you start switching to the other dungeons? Well, it's a little bit up to you. You could maybe set a hard goal of maybe saying at level 60 or level 70 or level 80 or maybe even all the way level 100, and then you don't have to look at Necro pretty much for a very long time ever again. So I think that one of those milestones is probably something fine to set. It's not very specific. For me, probably I will go a pretty lengthy route of maybe going towards like 70 or 80 that I stay in Necro, and then I'll go full hard on Giants. In the meantime, I will probably also do some Punisher script, just max that out, that I can also start scout battling that. I'm not too sure if I'm gonna hard stick in Giants. I think that what I will do is I will be making it a sub 40-second dungeon, which is very simple on Giants, but then just permanently scout battle Giants and farm everything else. Because it's always very important that you scout battle something that is sub 40 seconds, and Giants is one of those easier to get in. Plus, I will be feeding off the Tesha, which will definitely make my Giants team a lot slower. So therefore, scout battling in Giants will probably be the thing that I do. And that's all for this video. I hope you learned a thing or two about progression and that kind of good stuff. And also, highly recommend it. Do grab that Cordelia, because she's just crazy good for Steel Fortress. But yet again, she's only good for Steel Fortress. But she's also a must for it, I would say. There's replacements, but if she is a 10, the others are a 7 by best. So that's all for this video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab for the guide video archive, which contains all of the guides that you might need. Hope to see you there.